Gosh, there's so many themes, and I think one thing I really appreciate you mentioning is not to dichotomize automation, to assume that in the journey towards automating, human beings are going to be left out of the equation. That the only reason why we're even employing artificial intelligence is to enhance the human capabilities as well, and that they can actually work hand in hand. Going back to working remotely and just protecting organizational assets, it's obviously important to have technological systems that have predictive mechanisms. And as you've mentioned, just the importance of using behavioral prototyping to pick up on those anomalies as well, and be able to, as you've mentioned, quarantine certain domains that might be, and fireworks that might be at threat as well. I hope I'm speaking the appropriate tech jargon. Because I'm just a data analyst. I'm nowhere near your level of competence as well. But nonetheless, as I'd mentioned, how we are, living in the midst of uncertainty, I think businesses have also really had to adapt both medium and long-term imperatives for business survival. I'd be interested to know what cloud computing capabilities businesses and even ordinary individuals can really utilize to expedite the change that is necessary as we go into the new normal.
Okay. So it's exciting, like I said, and very fascinating. So when you look into how organization ought to function, so typically and traditionally we've put a strategic objective with timelines, and we kind of, drive as leaders of organizations where we should go. But things have changed. So having long-term goals doesn't cut it anymore. So you need to adapt. Right? So the emergent strategic thinking has to be brought to bear. So which means you have to explore and understand the environment that you operate in. And which means you have to continuously scan the information that gives you a sense of what's happening underneath. But then it gives you an opportunity to quickly deploy strategies to mitigate that. But you don't leave it to traditional wisdom. So you sense and you look into the outcome and have feedback mechanisms. So when you do that, then you can adapt and modify how you move forward. But you haven't forgotten about the long-term strategy. But what it means is that adaptability and capability to adapt, you now have to imbibe a lot of data. So your ability to have the data, the cost associated with having massive repositories of data, that's what cloud computing provides. So it's made it cheap to have a lot of data. Now you now have to scan and get insights and hidden patterns in that data. But that meant you had to be a mathematician, maybe a statistician, to build models onto consuming those patterns and predicting models on what things can pan out to be. But that's not necessary anymore. The cloud computing OEMs have now developed algorithms that you can use, which you would have needed statisticians and mathematicians to use. So lightly put, I could say it's AI as a service. Right? So you can do that. Nothing stops you from that. So ordinary organizations and leaders, they can then consume those models. They can see visualization, and it can inform their decision making. Yeah.
I think part of even the term, like a long-term imperative, really has to be redefined. Considering the margin of uncertainties is a lot bigger than it was in the past, and I think a lot of our decision-making has got to be predicated on artificial intelligence and data as well. So data is really going to drive decision-making. And they even say that data literally is a new oil. It's the new currency. And I think the moment we're able, and thank goodness for systems that are able to automate decision-making and really reduce the transitional time between navigating through statistical software to make decisions as well. We can create and rely on predictive modeling techniques to ensure that we mitigate the risks associated with change during these uncertain times. Thank you so much, Tshedi. Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to Kate, and just talking about the importance of data as well. So you and I had a conversation in the morning about how Microsoft, is it Microsoft or Google? I think it's Google. Google only has 20% of female engineers. And that is literally above and beyond me, above and beyond me. But I think before we even go into the role of women, maybe we can talk about how to ensure productivity as well during these uncertain times and working remotely as well. If I should ask, before I move on to Kate, do we have any questions for Sithedi or Sello? Questions about cloud computing? About its value offering from the ordinary individual all the way to an executive level? Question? No question? Great stuff. Yes, Dr. Thamsanqa?
Thank you very much. The question that I have, how do we leverage on the cost or the costing aspect of cloud computing or using AI to future projections for our businesses? Which one would be better, having an in-house or a consultant, or the one we are proposing when it comes to the cost element? That's number one, because we've mentioned the areas of reliability, which I think it's sound, but on the cost factor, number three issue is regards to how then do we get the same on a competitive edge with regards to our competitors, because we don't only need to do projections for our own organizations, but also we need to see how do our competitors also fare so that we become and stay on top of our game. Thank you.
Thank you, Thamsanqa. Would Sello or Sithedi like to take that?
Okay.
Okay, Sithedi.
Thanks for the question. So I think traditional wisdom will want you to look into the throughput and will want you to decrease your cost where you can and the variability on the cost. But I think that's traditional wisdom and it's predictable. But as soon as you have what we have as dynamism, it's quite difficult to have that approach and still win. So, but practically what it would mean is you would need to partner with external, even competitors, with external consultants to build that capability for you. And you will need to choose if you want to retain it. But I can say you'll find it very difficult to contain data scientists, as an example, to be part of your staff complement. So the idea then is to enlist their assistance in assisting you to build this model, but you don't take your word for it. And I think this is where it's fascinating. So you now have cloud computing to test those models and the hypothesis that they purport to be beneficial. But what it means is you only use and only spend on things you need. So if those models and hypotheses succeed, because we never know up until we test the hypothesis. Now what it does is it contains your cost to test the models on cloud, and this comes directly from your OPEX, so you don't have to have CAPEX planning and budgetary allocation to that. That gives you agility. But once you've tested the models, and then those models succeeds, then you ramp it up rapidly. But the cost is not a factor because the benefit has been proved, and what you can get out of it will always surpass your cost. So your cost consideration is not there. You're looking at the projected value or what you would get. But if it fails, then you cut your losses quite rapidly. So you retract, and then you can proceed and do other experimentations to see how you can get benefit. So the long-winded answer, but the answer is cost will always be there, but you have an opportunity to contain them, but at the same time to leverage potential value that you can exercise using the cloud, which then puts it on the OPEX level, and you don't have to always budget for them for fiscal year.
So, as you've mentioned as well, I mean, we can't exactly eliminate the entire cost, but what we can do is really increase the potential value exponentially. Yeah. I hope that's been well answered, and the Thamsanqa.
Yeah.
Great.
This reminded me, I just wanted to bring this visibility as well. So the ability to assess and censor the environment give you transparency to the cost drivers. So what it then does, it gives you levers to be able to now look into what you wouldn't have seen before as cost drivers, as these hidden patterns. And then it empowers you to make an appropriate decision to have a control on those costs. And I think that's one of the benefits we haven't had for a long time. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Tansanga, for asking the question. Are there any more questions before? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My question is centered around whether you guys have done any work in cultivating skills around SMEC. You know, we used to speak about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. But now we are moving towards SMEC, social skills, mobile analytics, and cloud. Are you guys doing anything in that space, especially working with young people?
Before you do answer, ma'am, I'd really appreciate if you could introduce yourself. I can tell you're definitely within the education academia space, but I would love for those who are watching to also know who you are and what you do.
Oh, okay. I am Dr. Wongiwe Ludidi. I run a small boutique consultancy called IGNO Consulting, focusing on academic mentoring and coaching, and I'm also an advisory board member at SAGRA. Thank you.
Great stuff.
I think maybe I can answer that. So ma'am, when I left Microsoft, I left with a couple of interns, graduates. And right now they are directors within the organization. And we've partnered with the likes of Kulisa Academy and some other organization where we are actually driving, employment of those graduates and giving them opportunities to work. So we are actually investing a lot in education within global computing and telecoms, not only technical but also leadership skills. So development, we take it very seriously. So our motto is we employ graduates, we give them exposure by hiring them and obviously working for global computing and telecoms. So we do believe in development, human development, and we spend a lot of money on enhancing the capability of human beings within the company. Yeah.
And just to add on that, I mean, graduates are key to our strategy. We want to take them in when they're fresh and their mind is still absorbative. Is that a word?
Girl, you just made it a word.
Obviously, the graduates are not learning from me. But yeah, take them when they're fresh and kind of train them the way that we feel that, they'll be of most use in the tech community.
I think it's such a success story to see global computing telecoms absorb interns from internship level all the way through to directorship. Yo, English, it's first Setswana, and then Sezulu, and then Turkish, and then English. So it's my fourth language. But nonetheless, it's beautiful to see how sustainable the development is and how well invested you are in individuals. I think not just on a horizontal level, right, but on a deep vertical level as well. Much appreciation. Big ups to global computing and telecoms. I would love to know, Kate, just around working remotely as well. Mm-hmm. We spoke about ensuring productivity while working remotely. And I think one of the biggest challenges that the pandemic has posed is really the challenge around working from home, and how to measure that productivity as well. And this has really underpinned the importance of being efficient and really streamlining business processes. I'm quite interested in knowing what sort of tools and capabilities you've been able to leverage at GCT to really capitalize and catalyze working remotely and being productive as well.
Thanks, Mahotso. Great question. I'm going to try not to make up any more words. I think I've done enough in the Zulu language. She'll know my isiZulu is kancane. So basically, we are a Microsoft Solutions partner. So we have the full Microsoft Solutions toolkit at our disposal. And I'm hoping Brady will have this event on Teams next year. Hey?
A quick shout out as well to Microsoft. while we're here, we had the incredible Miss Lillian Barnard, who is the, I think, MD if not
Yeah.
CEO, but the managing director of Microsoft has done phenomenal work. And maybe also to let you know that Global Computing and Telecoms is also a Microsoft Gold partner. So they really are, they've come from the absolute core and bosom of Microsoft. So a massive shout out to such a tech giant in creating the level of accelerated development in Africa as well. I think I should just be a brand ambassador. I mean, I've sold them, but it's fine. Please continue.
Cool. So as I was saying, we have this whole toolkit available to us. And like the Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella said, we've seen 2 years of digital transformation happen in 2 months. So it's already kind of accelerated the way that we are productive at home and, you know, even the tools that are available. So for example, if I push Microsoft Teams again, it's not just a video conferencing tool anymore. They've added additional functionality that allows us to have our to-do list, to monitor what people are doing, to have little groups. So it's really revolutionized the way we do work. The other nice thing about all the new tools that are available, it allows better collaboration. So yeah, it's been really great. There's also a new kind of tool that's been launched within Microsoft that kind of talks to Setsedi's discussion earlier, Cortana, which uses AI to actually highlight your tasks in your email and in Teams. So it also kind of takes that guesswork out a bit, which helps with productivity, so you don't always have to be managing your own tasks. The other nice thing, and I think you mentioned it earlier, is the data. So using all these digital tools as opposed to, you know, just talking or monitoring using pen and paper allows us to have a completely rich set of data. So for example, with Teams, we can actually look at the back end and see who's online, who isn't online, how productive are they being. So it also helps us make better decisions. The other tool that we've been using quite a lot, just to touch on your policies and processes, is surveys. So we've obviously needed to implement a lot more processes and policies in light of COVID. And we found that kind of bringing the team in at the beginning helps them to better understand why we're doing something and the reason behind the processes. So we found that using SurveyMonkey or Microsoft Forms, which plugs directly into Teams, can actually help us get an understanding of where the team is and how we can better make the processes work or how we can improve productivity, basically.
Wow. I think the first thing that comes up is, okay, so privacy though. How do we work around that as well? You know, sort of knowing what employees are doing remotely. My last question to you, Kate, and I know this is an area that you and I are so passionate about, and that's women, right? Women empowerment. We were discussing earlier on that 20% of engineers at Google are women, which is it's quite tragic, right? And I think these statistics have also been echoed in top and very big tech companies around the world. I wonder why it is we're so uninformed and so unenlightened as to the value that women bring in the tech space. Why are women and why is a female potential so slept on? Why are we sleeping on ourselves?
Sure. It's really something I'm passionate about. I mean, actually, the global averages is women on C-suite or on the board, it's less than 20% around the world. Engineers, so not just at Google, it's less than 10% who are women on average. And that drops even more for women of color. So less than 4% of C-suite positions are held by women of color, which is, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And they've done so much research that actually shows that having women on C-suite level or as engineers doesn't just affect innovation, because obviously being more inclusive, you get a better idea of ways of doing things. It also actually impacts the bottom line. So they've done quite a few studies on this, but return on equity actually increased 53% when there was more women on the board and in C-suite leadership positions.
So it's interesting how the facts and the data is right there, but there still seems to be a bit of resistance in terms of the inclusion of women who were so underrepresented. And I really hope that in our quest to include more women in tech, it won't just be superficial, you know, but it will be echoed actively in the boardrooms at an executive level and at an operational level as well, where women empowerment shouldn't just be a noun. It should be a verb, you know, it should be a doing word that we are deliberate and actionable about. This brings us to the end of the panel discussion, which felt so short-lived, and only because I know you at a personal level as well. But nonetheless, because we are pressed for time, we will be closing the panel discussion. I'd like to thank you, Sithedi, Kate, and Sello, for joining us today. Thank you so much for highlighting the value that cloud computing has, and I really hope that SMMEs as well, which I would have loved to touch on, but we don't have time. SMMEs and smaller businesses can really find value and leverage in the post-pandemic and the new normal as well. But just to quickly wrap up, for individuals, businesses, corporates, executives who would like to contact you, who want to know more about your service offering at GCT, where can they find you?
So they can contact, is my mic on?
Yeah.
If not, okay.
Testing.
Go for it.
Hi, okay, there we go. So you can contact info@globalcomputing.co.za or find us on any of our social media handles, which is at Global Computing on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you again, Sello and Sithedi. We've
You're
reached the end of our panel discussion. A well round of applause, please.
Thank you, Makata.
Thank you.